let's get going with today's subject about assets. So we're going to be exploring all the different things you can add into a Gomo screen to make the content compelling and interactive for your learners. And they're very simple to set up. We've got a wide range of things you can add, a wide range of assets, but they're all set up in a very similar way. So I'm just going to switch off my camera as we jump into Gomo itself. So just a few basics for those of you who are very new to Gomo. Then it's entirely cloud-based. You don't install any software. As you can see, I happen to be on a Mac using Chrome, but of course you can be on a Windows using Edge or Chrome or whatever your standard platform and browser is. I'm just going to log into my team account, and by clicking on Gomo authoring, and this shows me the courses that I have within our team here. We can organize these into folders maybe by team member or subject area. But let's just jump in. I'm just going to build a new course. Again, for those of you who are new to Gomo, just to introduce this concept there. So I'm going to click on create a new course. Gomo is going to ask me a few questions to get me up and running. I can change all of this later. So I'm just going to give it a name. And also, bear in mind that Gomo's got really strong capabilities to help you build a multi-language course. So this is a single course containing multiple languages, and the learner just switches between those. And in terms of translation, then you can choose to send the text out for translation with our one-click translation export. But also, we've now introduced AI translation by linking into your own open AI accounts. And you'll see other webinars addressing that, but exciting new range of AI features that we've introduced. I'm just going to make this a single language course for today. This is about giving of course, its look and feel. So it's a style template to reflect the branding. And what I can do here is select one of these themes, the style templates, and then I can choose to use the theme editor, maybe to match brand colors and fonts and so on. And again, we go into depth about the theme editor in other webinars. This is about the structure of a Gomo course. So Gomo course isn't just a sequence of screens like a PowerPoint deck where you start at the beginning and go to the end, that we can have these higher level building blocks called topics. So a typical example would be that you're building an onboarding program for new hires to the company. Wants a topic about the company's history, another about the company's products and services, and so on. So those are the topics. In turn, those topics consist of a sequence of screens that the learner is going to work through. So I'm going to say I want an introduction, I want a menu. I'd just say 3 topics is fine for us today. I can add as many as I like later on. These are the elements which appear in the toolbar, so they'll always be available to the learner, like help and glossary. If I'm making this multi-language, I'd add in a language selector there as well. I'm just going to click create. So Gomo is going to look at all of those initial decisions I've made about the number of topics, the theme, any languages that I've added, and it's going to just create an outline course structure for me. So these are the top level building blocks, the topics. I've got an introduction leading to a menu, simple branching out the learning topics. If I needed it, I can have more complex structures. I can have subtopics here. I can create adaptive learning or dynamic branching. So for example, when the learner comes into the course, you prompt them to select their job role, and you can store that. And then using a technique called display conditions that we cover in other webinars, where you can show and hide things on the screen based on things happening. What the learner sees on any given screen, or even their whole journey through it, will depend on the choice they've made. But let's jump straight into the editor, because this is where we're going to find all the assets that we're going to look at. So I'm just going to click on this topic here, opens up another tab, and we'll just have a quick look at how the editor works, and then we'll start adding assets. So on the left-hand side here, I've got my navigator panel. This shows me all the screens in this particular topic. Gomo's added in a couple of sample screens to get us going, which is really useful if you're new to Gomo. But I can add in as many screens as I want. When I click on one of those screens, it loads the content into the content area here. Again, 2 important things here. There's no screen or canvas size to this. We're not trying to nudge this text to be, say, 100 pixels from the left, because that might work for desktop, But the great thing about Gomo content is it will automatically run on any screen size, any device, any orientation. And it does that using this idea of the blocks and columns. And these blocks, if I click on a block here, you can see we can divide it into columns. And the columns are where we put our assets, the actual interactions in there. The other important thing is you don't need to worry about fonts and colors and so forth. That's going to be taken care of by my theme, my brand template. And I can see how that works there just by going into the split view. So when I'm editing, in this case, the most basic thing, the text asset, all I do is put in the text. There's no font button. I select a style, and how that's going to appear will depend on how it's defined in my brand theme. So I'm always immediately on brand. But the important thing for today's webinar is the asset. So here I've got the asset tab. These are all the things that we can add into a Gomo screen. So let's just have a look at the top level categories first of all. We can add as many content blocks into a screen as we like and divide it into columns. So we're not limited to fixed layouts. We can just add in as many content blocks as going to be appropriate there. We have the media section, so we can add in MP3 audio, MP4 video. We can embed content, say from YouTube or Vimeo. And a wide range of presentation assets. We're going to try and squeeze in as many of these as we can today. But obviously we've got the basic things like text and images, but we've also got lots of these pre-built interactions like film strips and carousels to show sequences of images. We can have interactive images like image markers, so the learner can click on different parts of the image to get more information. We've also got things like the countdown timer, add a bit of gamification, maybe that the countdown timer asset, you've got 5 seconds to answer the question. And again, wide range of question types here, these question assets. The most common ones used are the multiple choice and select from list, but we've also got lots more interactive ones like drag and drop, text input, so the learner can type in an answer. We've got Likert survey style questions. But let's just go in and let's start having a look at what these different ones do. So I'm just going to add in a new screen here. And I just say add new screen. This gives me a blank screen that I can then begin to work with. So let's just have a look at some of these here. So if I wanted to add in additional content blocks in there, I can just add as many as I like and again divide them into columns. So let's just start building up from the most common ones. Obviously, the most common one is going to be using text. So you just find the text asset. And with all of these assets, you just drag and drop, and you can see where we can drop those in the block and column structure. And again, with this, we can just click and we can just put in some text. Assets demo there. And we can select a style. I'm going to make this a heading 1 style. And so we're off. We've got our first asset in there. Okay, the second most common one that's going to be used, of course, is the image asset. So we just find the image there, and we can drag and drop it. Maybe I can say I'm going to put it in the right-hand column there. And again, the great thing about these Gomo assets, particularly if you're new to Gomo, it will always give you some sample content. So if you're not sure about, say, what a comic strip does, you can just drop it in there, and then you can just simply go to the instant preview. And you can see, obviously, here it's just a stock image there. But what you can do to put in your own image, if you click on that, you can either use the browse button, but we've also tried to design Gomo so that if you double click, it's going to get you to where you want. So this shows me I can go to the thumb view, I can go through folders and so forth. If I haven't uploaded my image already, I can simply drag and drop it in there. So here I could just choose a different image in there, and so on. So again, so we've got text and images, but obviously we want to go way beyond that. So let's begin to have a look at again some very commonly used ones. And a really useful one here is to begin to get a bit of interactivity on the screen is the accordion asset. And what I find this is particularly useful if, say, you've got some content that's originally in a PowerPoint deck, where quite often you have headings and text and headings and text and so forth on the screen. And we can make it a bit more engaging and interactive using the accordion asset. I'll just drag that in there. Let's just preview it to see what it does, and then we'll have a look at the setup. So the idea of the accordion asset, you have headings where you can click or tap, and it just expands to show the text. And this is particularly nice on smartphone because it means that the learner isn't having to swipe up and down through lots of text. It can just tap and expand. So let's see how that's set up, because again, a lot of the assets are set up in a very similar way. So I just double click. Now, Gomo usually will give you 3 things to start. This is just to get you going. Obviously, you can change all of this. You can remove those. You'll see the little trash can icons there, just if you maybe only need 2 of them. But also, you can always add in more elements. So here, I'm going to just choose add an item, give it a heading. I'll just say Gomo, and I'll just say an authoring tool. So very simple, it's just text that we're dealing with here. We have other assets that can show more complex things, but this works really nicely for text. We can also change the ordering of the elements. So I'll just move Gomo up there, click apply. Let's go to our preview. And here we go. There's my new element in there. So you can get an awfully long way in terms of content creation just using text and image and accordion. Again, if you're new to Gomo, then even the accordion is going to give you that sort of start of an engaging experience. But let's move on and have a look at some of these other elements as well. So let's add in another screen. And let's have a look at some of our media assets. So typically the other thing that you want to be able to add in is some video. And by the way, do feel free to use the question panel, as some of you were doing earlier, to prompt me, just to ask any questions as we go through. So I'm going to say that I want to add in, say, some video in here. So I go to my media section, I find the video player, drop that in there. And again, Gomo already gives us some content. So we can preview that. We can see that we can have transcripts. We can add in subtitles as well. But obviously we want to put in our own video. So again, just as we did with the image, you can just click. If you haven't uploaded your file already, just drag and drop your MP4 file in there. Or here, I can just use one that I uploaded from my iPhone. And again, we can preview that. So again, very easy to use Gomo as this drag and drop tool. And here we are in Brighton on the south coast of England, and the weather is actually looking like that today. So you can use this simple drag and drop tool with all of these different assets, but also just bear in mind as well, particularly for those of you who are more experienced learning designers, you get a lot of control over these elements. So if I click on the video player here, you can see this is where I can put in my caption files. This is where I'll put my transcript. I could choose to switch off the progress bar so the learner can't just skip through the video. And of course, we can do things like screen locking and so forth, which we cover in another of these webinars. But so the message is, yep, you can use the simple course builder, but all of these assets you get a lot of control over. So we've got video there. Let's just add in another screen here. And let's go and look at the other most commonly used types here, which do the presentation assets, but things like film strips and carousels. And I'm just going to jump into an example of this. I'm going to go into some content created in Gomo, because this uses a range of assets on the screen. So this is what we call the film strip asset. It's one of the many types we have to show a sequence of images and associated text. This is the image wall asset, again, presenting the images in a different way with a description underneath. And then at the bottom here, we've got the carousel asset, so a bit like the film strip, but with horizontal navigation. So let's just have a look at, say, how we would add in say the carousel in there. So I just drag and drop the carousel. And again, we've got some sample content in here, so I can see how this works. We've got a heading, we've got text, and we've got the images in there. And again, if we have a look at how we edit that, double click, Again, you see that Gomo gives us three things to start here. So we've got headings, we've got text, and then we have an image. Just one tip here that quite often we get asked sort of, well, what size should I make my images? I mean, on the whole, Gomo is going to take care of that because it's responsive layout. It's going to adjust the image sizes. But if you want to, as a starting point, you'll see in the image description here, wherever you see an image, when you add something in, it will give you a suggested size. So it's saying, well, in this particular example, we're using 930 by 400 pixels. So if you're experimenting with Gomo, it might be worth just checking those and making your images that size or that aspect ratio to start with. So again, we could just choose to add in more items into the carousel. So they're all set up in a very similar way. If we have a look at the film strip in here, I drop that in. Again, we can preview that. Here we go. This is our vertical navigation there. And if we look at how we set that up, again, it's set up in a very, very similar way to the carousel in there as well. Three things to start. Of course, add as many as we like. And then we've also got things like the comic strip in there. So let's have a quick look at what the comic strip does. So here, comic strip. This works by slicing up your images. So again, a different way to present them. And you can mix and match these for your learners to create a more engaging, interactive experience. And again, we'll see if we click there, again, you'll be recognizing this again, that it gives you three things to start, very easy to add in, extra steps, change this, change the images being used, and again, suggested sample image size. So, we've got beginning to get this interactivity in terms of the images as well here. Also, just to point out that here, let's have a quick look at interactive images. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to add in the image markers asset. So this is where we can begin to put in these little pins onto an image. So here, if I click there, I can move these around. Obviously, we can choose which image that we're going to have. And what we can do is trigger things on this, what we call actions. And one thing that I can do here, I'm just going to add in what we call a subscreen, a pop-up window here. And I'm just going to put in some dummy text in there. Just so I've got that. And I'm going to, in there, let's actually add in a subscreen. That's it. And now we'll put some text in there. So we'll put some text in there. I'm going to specify a style. I'm going to make it a pop-up. And what I can do now is just go back here and very simply link in these hotspots. So I'm going to say, when you click on this one, attach an action. This is like a trigger. And the thing that I want to do is show a subscreen. There's the one that I created. Apply that. And let's go into preview. So again, when I click on that, it now links into my subscreen. So really interesting and easy way to create this kind of interactive image, including I could use this to just link to a different part of the course as well. So let's just now go and have a look at the other thing that you'll most likely want to do is add in questions. So let's go back to the editor here. Let's add in another screen down here. Go back to our Assets tab, and let's go and have a look at how you set up a question. Now, all of these questions will look very different to the learner, but they're all set up in a very similar way. So from your point of view, once you've got used to how to set up one type of question, the other types of questions will be very similar. So here, let's just take a multiple choice question. Drag and drop that in there. When we click on there, again, this is going to be common to most of the question types. The first thing is you can specify how many attempts. So if you just select one attempt, obviously they only have one go at the question. If we have two attempts, I can show a message if they get it wrong the first time. And again, here I'm using this basic tab. What that means is that Gomo will simply generate one of those pop-up subscreens for me. If I wanted to link in my own subscreens, I can use the Advanced tab. Again, Gomo gives me three possible answers. I can add in as many possible answers as I want. So I might say Paris. Here, I need to tell Gomo which is the correct answer, both in terms of whether they get another go, but also whether, if this is part of a formal assessment, whether they're going to get a point added to their score. I can choose to give feedback, for example, there. Or I can choose to give no feedback at all, particularly if it's part of an assessment. I can give specific feedback to a wrong answer. So I can say, no, it's not Paris, it's England, and so on. And now if I apply that, we'll just try that. Obviously, I'd add in some question text, the question stem. But the idea here is if I get it wrong once, it lets me try again. If I get it wrong, I can reset, get it wrong again. I get the particular feedback related to that particular wrong answer. And so all of the questions are added in a very similar way and configured in a very similar way. Just one thing to show as well, that I mentioned the more interactive assets here, that things like the drag and drop asset. Let's have a look at how that works. Again, it enables me to drag either images or also text instead. And I can use that as a question. So again, to make it a bit more interactive, a bit more engaging. When you're setting up the drag and drop, this is one where it's slightly different because you specify drop zones. So you can have as many drop zones as you want. Notice that we still have the number of attempts. But then I can either have images here, so you just browse for the images that you want dragged, or you just remove the images and you can just put in your text if you want to be able to, say, drag words into the appropriate box to say noun or verb and so on. And again, we get the feedback here about if they can try it again, if they get it right and get it wrong. So again, very different look to the learner, but again, pretty simple to set up there. So I hope that that's given you at least a flavor of what assets do. I would encourage you to, particularly if you're new to Gomo, to just drag and drop these different assets in there, play about with them, sort of see what they do by default, and then just go and double click on them and add in your own content. And you'll soon get a sense for the range of these interactions and which ones are going to work best in terms of bringing your content to life for your learners.